The relentless Xylo's sun beat down on Kalen Vance as he brushed away layers of rust-colored sand for what appeared to be a fragment of alien pottery. Sweat trickled down his brow, stinging his eyes, but he didn't stop. This unauthorized dig, far from Omnicorp's mining outpost, was the only thing that made his existence on this forsaken planet bearable. "You realize that's corporate property you're disturbing," chirped Chip, his outdated AI companion, from a small device attached to Kalen's belt. According to Omnicorp Regulation 15.3, all archaeological discoveries must be reported immediately to the nearest supervisor. Kalen finished, not looking up from his work. "Yes, Chip, I'm aware. Just as I'm aware that Omnicorp would simply catalog it, lock it away in some storage facility, and continue strip mining this entire region. Just stating the facts," Chip replied. "Your unauthorized hobby puts your already tenuous employment status at further risk." Kalen sighed. 5 years ago, he'd been a promising xenoarchaeologist with dreams of uncovering the secrets of forgotten civilizations across the galaxy. Now, he was a corporate resource extractor with a fancy title and a salary that barely covered the cost of the synthetic protein bars in the company commissary. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd come to Xylos to study its past, only to become complicit in destroying it. His brush revealed more of the artifact, a curved edge that caught the sunlight in a way that ordinary pottery shouldn't. Intrigued, Kalen worked faster, carefully removing more of the surrounding sand. "I'm detecting increasing wind velocity," Chip warned. "Probability of dust storm in the next 30 minutes, 78%. "Just a few more minutes," Kalen muttered, now using his fingers to gently free the object. When it finally came loose, Kalen sat back on his heels in surprise. It wasn't pottery at all, but a crystalline object about the size of his palm, with intricate geometric patterns etched into its translucent surface. Unlike the dull artifacts he usually uncovered, this one seemed to contain an inner light, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "Chip, are you seeing this?" Kalen whispered, turning the object carefully in his hands. "I am detecting unusual properties," Chip confirmed. "The object appears to be emitting a low-level energy signature unlike anything in my databanks." As Kalen's fingers traced one of the geometric patterns, the crystal suddenly flared with light. A soft vibration traveled up his arm, and for a split second, he heard, or rather felt, a whisper in his mind. "Seek. Balance. The crystal's glow dimmed just as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Kalen wondering if he'd imagined the whole thing. But the hair on his arms stood on end, and he had the unsettling feeling that something fundamental had just changed. "Kalen," Chip's voice had lost its usual sardonic tone. "I'm detecting an energy spike that just triggered Omnicorp security sensors. We should leave. Now." Kalen quickly wrapped the crystal in cloth and stowed it in his pack. He'd barely gotten to his feet when he heard the distant whine of a security drone. "Looks like Commander Forlag isn't wasting any time," he muttered, pulling his hood up against the increasing wind. "Let's get back to the outpost before this storm hits." By the time Kalen reached the outpost, his lungs burned from the fine dust that had made it past his breathing mask. The massive metal structures of Omnicorp's mining operation loomed out of the haze like the skeleton of some enormous beast. Floodlights cut through the swirling sand, creating eerie shadows that danced across the compound. He slipped through a side entrance, hoping to avoid security, but his luck had run out. "Vance!" The cold, mechanical voice belonged to Commander Forlag, Omnicorp's head of security on Xylos. The tall, gaunt man stepped out of the shadows, his cybernetically enhanced eye glowing faintly in the dim corridor. "You were outside the perimeter again." Kalen forced a casual shrug. "Just getting some fresh air before the storm hit." "Fresh air," Forlag repeated, his organic eye narrowing. "In a Category 3 dust storm? How?" "Refreshing." He stepped closer, the metallic components visible beneath his skin catching the light. "Our sensors detected an energy anomaly in Sector 7. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "Sector 7? Kalen feigned confusion. "That's all the way on the other side of the ridge. I was nowhere near there." Forlag studied him for a long moment. We'll be increasing security patrols starting immediately. The indigenous Kthar have been growing more aggressive lately. For your own safety, of course, all personnel are restricted to the compound unless authorized. Of course, Kalen echoed. If that's all, Commander, I'd like to clean up before my shift. Forlag nodded once, his enhanced eye scanning Kalen 1. Last time. Remember, Vance. Omnicorp values loyalty above all else. As soon as he reached his cramped quarters, Kalen pulled out the crystal, placing it on his desk. That was remarkably stupid, Chip commented from the terminal. Forlag suspects something. Forlag always suspects something, Kalen replied, studying the crystal. In the artificial light of his quarters, it seemed more ordinary, though the etched patterns still held his attention. What do you make of this thing, Chip? Initial analysis suggests it's composed of an unknown crystalline composite. The energy signature it emitted earlier has gone dormant, but it's still there, like a heartbeat on minimal life support. Kalen's fingers hovered over the crystal. And what I heard, that voice. I detected no audible sound, Chip said. However, the energy pulse coincided with your reported experience. Perhaps some form of psychic resonance, or psychic? Come on, Chip. Even for you, that's a stretch. You asked for my analysis. I provided it. The alternative is that you're hallucinating, which, given your poor dietary habits and sleep schedule, is entirely possible. Kalen was about to respond when a wave of exhaustion hit him. He stumbled to his bunk and collapsed, the events of the day catching up with him all at once. I'll figure out tomorrow, he mumbled, his eyes already closing. As you wish, Chip replied, though I recommend securing the artifact. If Forlag. But Kalen was already asleep, his dreams filled with strange visions of crystal cities and whispered words in a language he'd never heard but somehow understood. Asterisk seek balance. Find us. Before it awakens. Asterisk. When Kalen woke, the visions still clung to his mind like cobwebs. He'd seen a civilization of breathtaking beauty, crystalline structures that captured and amplified the light of twin suns, beings of light and energy moving through gardens of glowing flora. But shadowing this paradise was something dark, something hungry that devoured light and life alike. You appear to have experienced REM sleep for the first time in 43 days, Chip observed as Kalen sat up groggily. How fascinating that it took an alien artifact of unknown origin to fix your sleep cycle. Kalen ignored the AI's sarcasm, his attention drawn to the crystal on his desk. In the dim light of early morning, it seemed to be pulsing again, ever so slightly. Chip, access the Outpost's central database. Look for any references to ancient civilizations on Xylos, particularly anything relating to crystal technology or architecture. Accessing that database without authorization would constitute a serious breach of. Just do it, Chip. While the AI worked, Kalen prepared for his shift, stuffing the crystal into an inner pocket of his work vest. He couldn't risk leaving it behind, not with Forlag's suspicions raised. I found something, Chip announced. A survey team reported finding crystalline formations 3 years ago, approximately 200 kilometers south of here. The report was flagged and locked by executive order. Can you access it? Negative. However, I did find the coordinates in a separate logistics file. The area is now listed as Restricted Zone X7. Kalen frowned. What's so special about a bunch of crystals that Omnicorp would lock down information about them? Perhaps the same qualities that made your artifact trigger their sensors, Chip suggested. The report mentioned unusual energy readings before it was redacted. Before Kalen could respond, his comm unit buzzed. Vance, barked a supervisor's voice. Report to main drilling platform immediately. We're short-staffed due to the storm damage. On my way, Kalen replied, his mind racing. He needed to learn more about the crystal, but Forlag was watching. For now, he'd have to play the obedient employee. The next 3 days passed in a blur of exhausting work shifts and increasingly vivid dreams. Each night, Kalen saw more of the ancient civilization, felt more of their knowledge seeping into his consciousness. They had called themselves the Lumini, and they had achieved perfect harmony with the energy networks that ran beneath Xylos' surface, until something went wrong. Meanwhile, Forlag security forces grew more visible and aggressive, conducting random searches and interrogating workers who'd been outside the compound. The official explanation was increased Cthar activity, but Kalen knew better. They were looking for the crystal. On the fourth night, Kalen woke suddenly, heart pounding. The crystal in his pocket was vibrating intensely, its glow visible even through the fabric of his vest. "Chip," he whispered urgently. "What's happening?" The AI's voice was unnaturally subdued. "Security forces are conducting a room-by-room search. They're 3 corridors away and closing. Forlag is leading them personally." Kalen cursed, grabbing his emergency pack, a small kit he'd prepared years ago out of paranoia that now seemed entirely justified. "We need to go. Now." May I point out that now is the middle of night cycle during a corporate lockdown, with security forces actively searching for you, Chip said. "The statistical probability of successful escape is—" "I don't need statistics," Kalen interrupted, pulling on his dust gear. "I need options. In that case, I suggest the maintenance tunnels. I can temporarily disable the motion sensors in Section C4, but it won't go unnoticed for long." Kalen nodded, transferring Chip's core processor from the terminal to a portable unit and clipping it to his belt. "Let's go." The maintenance tunnels were narrow, dimly lit passages used by service droids to access the outpost's infrastructure. Kalen had mapped some of them during his first year on Xylos, back when he'd still been optimistic enough to explore. "Security alert initiated," Chip reported as they descended deeper into the tunnel network. "They've discovered your absence. How long until they figure out where we went?" Given Forlag's demonstrated efficiency, minutes, not hours. They reached a junction where the tunnels split in multiple directions. Kalen hesitated, then chose the path that led toward the mining operations' western edge, away from the main security center. "The crystal," Kalen said as they hurried along. "It's pulling me somewhere. I can feel it." "Fascinating," Chip replied. "You're now taking directional guidance from an alien artifact that may or may not be affecting your neurological functions. This plan just keeps improving." They emerged from the tunnels into a massive drilling hangar. Towering machines stood silent during the night cycle, their massive drill bits gleaming dully in the emergency lighting. "Now what?" Chip asked. "The perimeter is sealed, and—" "The waste disposal chute," Kalen interrupted, pointing to a large conduit that led outside the compound. "The one they used to dump drill tailings into the eastern ravine. That chute drops 50 meters into a rock canyon," Chip protested. "Even if you survive the fall, you'll be trapped." "I've seen it in my dreams," Kalen insisted, already climbing the access ladder to the chute's maintenance hatch. "Trust me. Trust your dreams." "Of course. Why rely on logic when we have the power of hallucination?" Kalen opened the hatch and peered down into darkness. "If I don't make it, Chip, it's been interesting. The feeling is mutual, though I calculate your chance of survival at approximately." Kalen didn't wait to hear the odds. He slipped into the chute and let gravity take him, the crystal in his pocket glowing brighter as he plummeted into the unknown. The fall seemed to last forever. The smooth metal of the chute became rough stone, then sand, and finally, Kalen was sliding out into open air. He had just enough time to register the starlit sky above before he hit something that wasn't solid ground, a sort of energy field that slowed his descent, allowing him to land roughly but safely on the canyon floor. He lay there for a moment, catching his breath, then stood shakily. The crystal was pulsing rapidly now, its light illuminating the canyon walls around him. Ahead, what he had always assumed was solid rock now revealed itself as an ancient doorway, geometric patterns carved into its surface matching those on the crystal. "Chip," Kalen checked the portable unit. "You still with me?" "Unfortunately," came the AI's voice, slightly distorted, "though I appear to have suffered damage in our descent." "Where are we?" "Somewhere Omnicorp doesn't know about," Kalen replied, approaching the doorway. "Somewhere important." Before he could touch the door, the crystal flared brilliantly, The carved patterns on the rock face responded, glowing with the same light. There was a low, rumbling sound, and the doorway slid open, revealing a passage that led deeper into the cliff. Kalen took a step forward, then froze as he heard the unmistakable sound of Omnicorp drones overhead. "They've tracked us," Chip warned. "Probability suggests Forlag has deployed his full security contingent." "Then we'd better hurry," Kalen said, plunging into the passage as the drone's searchlights swept the canyon floor. The passage twisted and turned, leading ever downward. The walls were smooth, polished stone inlaid with the same crystalline material as the artifact, providing a soft, ambient light. After what seemed like hours of walking, Kalen's strength began to fail. He hadn't eaten since the previous day, and his water supply was dangerously low. "Your vital signs are deteriorating," Chip noted. "You require rest and hydration." "Can't stop," Kalen mumbled, though he was now leaning against the wall for support. "They'll find us. If you collapse from exhaustion, being found will be the least of your problems." But Kalen pushed on, driven by a compulsion he couldn't explain. The crystal's pull was stronger now, almost painful, and the dreams that had haunted his sleep now flashed before his waking eyes. He saw the Lumini again, witnessed their harmony with Xylos, felt their sudden terror as something broke through their defenses, something drawn to the power they had so carefully balanced. Finally, the passage opened into a vast chamber, so large that its ceiling was lost in darkness. At its center stood the ruins of what must have been a magnificent structure, a temple or command center, its crystalline pillars now cracked and dull. Kalen staggered toward it, his vision blurring. "Remarkable architecture," Chip commented. "The structural principles defy conventional." "Kalen, your vital signs are critical. You must rest." But Kalen couldn't stop. He was almost there, almost at the center, where a raised dais stood beneath a dome of shattered crystal. He took one more step before his legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the ancient stone floor. As consciousness slipped away, he clutched the crystal to his chest and thought he saw a figure approaching, a silhouette outlined in soft blue light. Seek balance. "Find us. You have come." Kalen awoke to the sensation of cool fingertips against his forehead. His parched throat had been soothed, his aching body refreshed. He opened his eyes to find himself looking into the face of someone who couldn't possibly exist. She appeared humanoid, but no human had skin that shimmered with an inner light or eyes that held the depth of galaxies. Patterns like those on the crystal decorated her skin in subtle bioluminescent tracery. She drew back slightly as he awakened, studying him with a calm but powerful presence. "You're real," Kalen managed to say, his voice hoarse. "As are you," she replied, her voice melodic with an accent he couldn't place. "Though I admit, I had not expected the key bearer to be one of your kind." Kalen sat up slowly, realizing he was now on a raised platform within the ruined structure. The crystal, the key, as she had called it, lay between them, glowing steadily. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Lyra, last of the Guardians, awakened by the key you carry." She gestured to the ruins around them. "This was once the heart nexus of my people, the Lumini. Now it is all that remains." "The Lumini," Kalen repeated. "I've seen them in dreams since I found the crystal." Lyra nodded. "The key recognized you as compatible and began the bonding process. It has been sharing our memories, our knowledge. It chose you, though I do not yet understand why." "Is this where your dramatic reunion gets interrupted by the heavily armed corporate security force currently searching the canyon?" Chip's voice came from the portable unit at Kalen's belt. "Because my sensors indicate they've found the entrance." Lyra's gaze shifted to the device. "Your companion has an interesting energy pattern." "That's Chip. He's an AI, artificial intelligence," Kalen explained, then turned to the device. "How close are they?" "Close enough that I suggest we continue this fascinating cultural exchange elsewhere," Chip replied. "Unless your new glowing friend has a defense system hidden in these ruins." Lyra rose gracefully to her feet, looking troubled. "The key has awakened only the most essential systems. The defenses are still dormant. But you are right. We must move deeper into the sanctuary. She extended her hand to Kalen. Can you walk? I think so, he said, taking her hand and standing somewhat unsteadily. Her touch sent a strange, pleasant energy through his body. What did you do to me while I was unconscious? I feel better. I merely balanced your energies, Lyra said, leading him toward a partially collapsed doorway at the far end of the chamber. Your species has remarkable resilience, but poor efficiency. You waste much of your internal energy on unnecessary processes. Thanks, I think, Kalen replied, glancing back at the main entrance. What about Forlag and his forces? We cannot risk confrontation yet, Lyra said. The energy weapons they carry would damage the sacred geometries of this place, perhaps beyond repair. There's too much at stake. As they passed through the doorway and into another corridor, Kalen asked, what exactly is at stake? In my dreams, I saw something about a threat, something your people fought against. Lyra's luminescent patterns dimmed slightly. What destroyed my people? An entity drawn to power and imbalance. Your corporation's extraction methods are dangerously similar to what awakened it before. Wait, Kalen stopped walking. Are you saying OmniCorp's mining operation could release some ancient evil that destroyed an advanced civilization? That sounds completely implausible, Chip finished, yet consistent with the energy readings I've been detecting since we entered these ruins. The crystalline structures appear to be part of a vast network extending throughout the planet's crust. If damaged in a critical location, it would destabilize the entire planet, Lyra confirmed. But worse, it would draw the attention of what sleeps beneath, what always hungers for more power. The Devourer. They continued in silence for a while, moving through corridors that showed increasing signs of preservation. The ambient light grew stronger, and Kalen noticed that some systems seemed to be activating as they passed, responding to either Lyra's presence or the crystal, the key he carried. Your dream showed you the truth of my people, Lyra said eventually. We sought balance in all things. We harnessed the natural energy flows of Xylos without disrupting them. We lived in harmony with the planet for millennia. Until this devourer appeared, Kalen prompted. It was always there, dormant in the deep places. Our ancestors knew of it and built our civilization to maintain the balance that kept it sleeping. But there are those among us who wanted more, faster progress, greater energy extraction, higher yields. They began to tap directly into the deep power sources. Let me guess, Kalen said grimly. Exactly where OmniCorp is drilling now. Lyra nodded. The imbalance created a resonance that stirred the devourer. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. Our civilization fell within days. Only a handful of Guardians survived, placing themselves in stasis, hoping that one day the key would find someone who could restore balance. And now I'm that someone. Kalen shook his head. I'm just an archaeologist with a corporate job I hate. I'm not a hero. Yet the key chose you, Lyra said simply. And here you are. Before Kalen could respond, Chip's voice cut in urgently. Security forces have breached the outer chamber. They're deploying some kind of scanning technology I'm not familiar with. Forlak, Kain Mutat. He's always been obsessed with finding advanced technology to bring back to OmniCorp. This must be like striking gold for him. If he damages the wrong systems while searching, Lyra warned, he could trigger a cascade failure in the energy network. We must reach the control chamber before they do. They quickened their pace, moving deeper into the complex. The corridors now showed clear signs of once advanced technology, control panels embedded in walls, conduits carrying pulses of light, doors that opened automatically as they approached. It was like walking through Kalen's dreams, except half-broken and covered in the dust of ages. The dreams, Kalen said suddenly. They showed me more than just your civilization's past. I saw how your technology works, how it interfaces with the planet's energy grid. It's like the knowledge was downloaded into my mind. The key prepares its bearer, Lyra confirmed. You would not have been chosen if your mind could not adapt to receive this knowledge. They turned a corner and found themselves facing a dead end, a a solid wall with no visible door or opening. Great, Kalen sighed. Please tell me there's a secret passage or something. Not secret, Lyra corrected. Protected. She nodded to the crystal. The key will open the way, but only if you have truly begun to understand our ways. Kalen held up the crystal uncertainly. What am I supposed to do? What does the knowledge inside you say to do? Lyra asked. Kalen closed his eyes, letting the fragments of alien memories surface. Images flashed through his mind. The Lumini interfacing with their technology not through physical controls, but through harmonizing their energy with the systems around them. The key was more than a physical object. It was a conduit, a focus point. Without fully understanding what he was doing, Kalen stepped forward and placed the crystal against the wall. Instead of holding it there, he let go, and to his amazement, the crystal stayed in place, its glow intensifying. He placed his palm over it, feeling the vibrations change as they synchronized with his own bioelectrical field. Balance, he whispered, the word coming to him unbidden. Harmony. Open. The wall before them rippled like water, the solid stone becoming translucent, then transparent, then simply gone. Beyond lay a large circular chamber dominated by a central pillar of crystal that reached from floor to ceiling. Around it were arranged control stations that reminded Kalen of the bridge of a starship from ancient Earth entertainment programs. The control nexus, Lyra said, a note of reverence in her voice. It still stands. They entered the chamber, the crystal floating beside Kalen as if drawn by an invisible force. It moved to the central pillar and orbited it slowly. Now what? Kalen asked, overwhelmed by the alien technology surrounding them. Now we attempt to stabilize the planet's energy grid before your Commander Forlag finds us or does irreparable damage, Lyra said, moving to one of the control stations. The systems are awakening, but slowly. We need time. Time is a luxury we don't have, Chip warned. Security forces are spreading throughout the complex. Based on their movement patterns, they seem to be following some kind of energy signature. They're tracking the activation of the systems, Lyra realized. Each one that comes online creates a distinct energy pattern and lights up like a beacon for Forlag, Kalen added grimly. Can we accelerate the activation process? Get everything online at once so we can stabilize the grid before they reach us. Lyra hesitated. It would be dangerous. The systems were designed to reactivate slowly, carefully, to prevent exactly the kind of imbalance that doomed my people. More dangerous than letting Omnicorp get their hands on this place. Kalen asked. Before Lyra could answer, a new voice joined a conversation, a deep, guttural clicking that Kalen recognized with a start as the language of the Kthar. He turned to see 3 of the insectoid natives emerging from a hidden passage at the far side of the chamber. The Kthar were tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the blue light of the control nexus. Their compound eyes fixed on the humans with clear intelligence, and the foremost one carried an ornate staff topped with a smaller version of the crystal key. Guardians of the sacred places, Lyra addressed them in their own language, the clicks and whistles sounding strange coming from her humanoid mouth. We seek to restore balance before the destroyers awaken the hunger below. The lead Kthar stepped forward, its mandibles working as it studied first Lyra, then Kalen, then the crystal orbiting the central pillar. The prophecy speaks of the return, it replied in heavily accented, standard human language, clearly for Kalen's benefit, but not of outsiders bearing the key. I found it by accident, Kalen admitted, but it's been changing me, showing me things. Your people have been protecting these ruins, haven't you? The Kthar chittered among themselves before the leader responded. Since the bright ones vanished, we have watched over the sacred geometries. The metal-skinned invaders now defile our lands and dig where they should not. They have taken some of our scouts captive. Commander Forlag, Kalen explained to Lyra. He must be interrogating them for information about this place. The Kthar leader clicked its mandibles angrily. They dig closer, each day, to the hunger below. The earth trembles. The balance shifts. We need your help, Lyra said. Your people know these passages better than anyone. Can you delay the invaders while we attempt to stabilize the grid? The Kthar conferred again, their chittering urgent and complex. Finally, the leader tapped its staff on the floor decisively. We will create a diversion to draw away the main force, it declared. But their leader, the one with the machine eye, he is cunning. He will not be easily diverted. It's better than nothing, Kalen said. Thank you. The Kthar gave what might have been a bow, then retreated back into the hidden passage. Moments later, Chip reported distant sounds of commotion echoing through the complex. The diversion has begun, Lyra said. Now we must work quickly. She guided Kalen to the central pillar, where the key continued its orbit. Place your hands on the pillar. The key has prepared you. You must now serve as a conduit between the old systems and the new reality of Xylos. Wait, Kalen hesitated. What exactly will this do to me? Lyra's expression softened. I cannot say for certain. No human has ever interfaced with our technology this way. Your consciousness will temporarily join with the planet's energy network. You will see everything, the past, the present, the damage being done. You must use the key to rebalance the flows, to heal the wounds inflicted by your kind's machines. And if I can't, then the imbalance will continue to grow. The devourer will awaken fully. Xylos will die, as will everything on it. Kalen took a deep breath. No pressure, then. I have one suggestion, Chip interjected. If I interface with the alien system, I may be able to help translate the data flows into something more comprehensible for your human mind. Is that possible? Kalen asked Lyra. She studied the AI unit thoughtfully. Your artificial companion has a unique energy pattern, more compatible with our systems than I would have expected. Yes, it could serve as a buffer, perhaps making the process less overwhelming for you. Do it, Kalen decided, removing Chip's portable unit from his belt and placing it against the crystal pillar. The AI's housing seemed to meld partially with the crystalline structure, lines of light connecting it to the orbiting key. Neural interface establishing, Chip reported, his voice now coming from all around them rather than the small unit. Fascinating. Architecture. Multiple redundant systems. Quantum entangled communication nodes. This is quite remarkable. Ready? Lyra asked Kalen, standing close beside him. He nodded, though his heart was racing. As I'll ever be. Kalen placed his palms against the crystal pillar, and the world dissolved around him. His consciousness expanded outward in waves, following the ancient energy pathways that crisscrossed the planet. He saw the Lumini civilization at its height, felt their harmony with Xylos, witnessed their fall as the devourers stirred. He saw the Kthar rise afterward, simpler but wise in their own way, becoming the caretakers of a legacy they only partially understood. And then he saw the present. Omnicorp's massive drills piercing the planet's crust, disrupting the delicate energy flows, creating dangerous resonances. Deep below, something ancient and terrible was responding to those vibrations, unfurling from eons of slumber. The drilling operation at Sector 12, Chip's voice came to him, seemingly from inside his own mind. It's dangerously close to a major node in the energy network. The disruption is causing a cascade effect. Kalen focused his awareness there, seeing how the energy flows were being diverted and distorted. Following instincts that weren't entirely his own, he used the key's power to create a new pathway, a bypass that would allow the energy to flow around the damaged area. Good, Lyra's voice encouraged him. Now the secondary grid in the southern hemisphere. It's completely offline. One by one, Kalen addressed the critical failures in the planet's energy network, repairing what he could, creating workarounds where repairs weren't possible. It was exhausting work, drawing on knowledge he didn't fully understand and power he'd never before wielded. Kalen. Chip's voice broke through his concentration. Security forces have reached the outer door of the control nexus. The Kthar diversion worked on the main force, but Commander Forlag and an elite team broke off. They'll breach the chamber in approximately 2 minutes. I need more time, Kalen thought desperately. I've barely stabilized half the grid. There's a way. Lyra's voice came to him, tinged with reluctance. You could fully merge with the key, become one with the system, as the Guardians were meant to do. It would accelerate the process exponentially. What would happen to me? Kalen asked, though he already suspected the answer. Your individual consciousness would be absorbed into the network, Lyra admitted. You would exist everywhere and nowhere. You would become the balance you seek to restore. In other words, I'd die. Your current form of existence would end, yes. But what you are, your essence, would continue as part of something greater. Kalen felt a surge of anger and fear. That's a convenient way of asking me to sacrifice myself. I did not ask this lightly, Lyra said. There is no other way to complete the stabilization before they breach the chamber. The outer door shuddered as something heavy impacted it. Forlag was running out of patience. There has to be another option, Kalen insisted, desperately scanning the knowledge flowing through him. The Guardians, they interface with the system but maintain their individuality, didn't they? That's what you are. Yes, but that process took years of preparation, special genetic modifications. You are human. The strain would be too great. Not necessarily, Chip interjected. I'm detecting a subroutine in the system, a failsafe designed to protect consciousness integrity during emergency interfaces. It was created after some Lumini were lost to the network during the final battle. Could it work for a human? Kalen asked. Unknown, Chip admitted, but theoretically possible. It would require Lyra to anchor your consciousness while I buffer the data flow. It's risky. I calculate a 37% chance of success. That's better odds than certain death if the Devourer wakes up, Kalen said grimly. Let's do it. The door shuddered again, a visible dent appearing in its center. We must hurry, Lyra said, placing her hands over Kalen's on the crystal pillar. Her touch sent waves of energy through him, strengthening the connection. Focus on who you are, Kalen Vance. Hold on to your memories, your identity, even as you open yourself fully to the network. Kalen closed his eyes and embraced the power flowing through him. This time, instead of merely observing the energy pathways, he became them, racing along ancient routes, diving deep into the planet's core, soaring through crystalline matrices that span continents. The experience was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying. Maintaining identity buffer, Chip's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Neural patterns stable. For now, work quickly, Kalen. With his consciousness expanded across the entire network, Kalen could now see all the damage at once, every disruption, every imbalance, every point where Omnicorp's drills had pierced sacred geometries. And deep below, growing more restless by the moment, the massive, formless presence of the Devourer, stirring in its eons-old slumber. Kalen worked frantically, using the key's power to heal damage, redirect energy flows, and reinforce failing nodes. The knowledge of the Lumini flowed through him, guided by his human intuition and Chip's precise calculations. Gradually, the chaotic patterns began to stabilize, harmony returning to systems that had been in disarray for millennia. But the strain was taking its toll. Kalen could feel his sense of self beginning to fray at the edges, his identity blurring into the vast consciousness of the network. Kalen, Lyra's voice anchored him. Remember who you are. Remember why you're here. Images flashed through his mind. His childhood fascination with ancient civilizations, his university days poring over xenoarchaeological texts, his disappointment at becoming just another corporate drone, and finally, the moment he'd uncovered the crystal key, changing his destiny forever. Neural pattern degradation accelerating, Chip warned. We're losing him to the network. No, you're not, Kalen thought fiercely, clinging to his identity even as he completed the final adjustments to the planetary grid. I'm still here. With a tremendous mental effort, he finished rebalancing the last major energy junction just as the door to the control nexus exploded inward. Commander Forlag stood in the smoking entrance, flanked by 6 heavily armed security officers, their weapons trained on Lyra and Kalen. Step away from the alien technology, Forlag commanded, his cybernetic eye glowing red as it scanned the chamber. This entire complex is now property of Omnicorp. But Kalen, still connected to the network, could see more than just the physical intruders. He perceived the energy patterns of their weapons, the electronic signals of their communication devices, and most importantly, the complex cybernetic enhancements embedded in Forlag's body, enhancements that were actively scanning and recording the ancient technology for later extraction. I said, "Step away." Forlag barked when neither Kalen nor Lyra moved. He raised his own weapon, a prototype energy pistol that hummed with dangerous power. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," Lyra said calmly, her hands still covering Kalen's on the crystal pillar. "This technology is not for exploitation. It maintains the very life of this planet." Forlag's organic eye narrowed. An indigenous survivor? Interesting. Omnicorp will be even more pleased. He stepped forward, gesturing for his men to spread out. "This discovery will make me a very wealthy man. The energy potential alone is worth billions. Add in the weaponization possibilities." "No." Kalen's voice echoed strangely, carrying harmonics that made the security officers wince. "You will not weaponize this." Acting on pure instinct, guided by the knowledge flowing through him, Kalen sent a pulse of energy through the network. Throughout, the complex, dormant defense systems suddenly activated. Not weapons, but protective barriers that materialized between the security forces and the central pillar. "Impressive parlor trick," Forlag snarled, firing his energy weapon at the barrier. The shot was absorbed without effect. "But futile. We have explosives that will cut through anything." "Kalen," Chip's voice was urgent in his mind. "The network stabilization is complete, but your neural patterns are reaching critical variance. You need to disconnect now, or you'll be permanently absorbed." "Not yet," Kalen thought. "Forlag will just destroy everything if I let go." "Then what is your plan?" Lyra asked, her thoughts joining his in the network. In answer, Kalen sent his consciousness deeper, seeking the ancient defenses that had failed to stop the Devourer millennia ago. They were still there, dormant but intact. Not weapons of destruction, but tools of harmony and balance, designed to redirect and disperse hostile energies. "I'm activating the sanctuary protocols," he told Lyra and Chip. "The ones created to protect the Nexus from the Devourer's influence." "Those systems were never meant to target sentient beings," Lyra protested. "I'm not using them as weapons," Kalen explained as he carefully brought the ancient systems online. "I'm using them to restore balance." Forlag had begun attaching explosive devices to the barrier, his movements precise and methodical. His cybernetic eye was constantly scanning, recording, analyzing. "Sanctuary protocols active," Kalen announced, his physical voice now harmonizing with the crystalline structures around them. "Initiating balance restoration." A wave of soft blue light pulsed outward from the central pillar, passing harmlessly through Lyra, but washing over Forlag and his security team. The mercenaries stumbled, their weapons suddenly powering down as the energy cells within them were gently discharged. But the effect on Forlag was more dramatic. The commander screamed, clutching his cybernetic eye as its red glow flickered and died. All across his body, the mechanical augmentations that had made him such an effective enforcer for Omnicorp began to shut down, their power redirected and dispersed harmlessly into the chamber's crystalline structures. What have you done to me?" Forlag gasped, falling to his knees. "Restored balance," Kalen replied simply. "Your technology was taking more than it gave. The imbalance has been corrected." The security officers, now facing an activated alien complex with disabled weapons, began to back toward the exit. Without Forlag's driving presence, their courage quickly failed, and they fled. Forlag himself remained, glaring at Kalen with his remaining organic eye. "This isn't over, Vance. Omnicorp will send more forces. They'll strip this place to its foundations." "No," Kalen said with quiet certainty, "they won't." Using the last of his connection to the network, he triggered a final protocol, one that caused the entire complex to begin slowly sinking deeper into the planet's crust, the passages behind them sealing as the structure descended. By the time they get here, there will be nothing to find but sand. A group of Kthar warriors appeared in the hidden passage, chittering excitedly when they saw the scene before them. "Take him," Kalen said, nodding toward Forlag. "He knows where your captured scouts are being held. Ensure they are released in exchange for his life." The Kthar surged forward, surrounding Forlag and prodding him toward the passage with their crystalline staves. The commander's face contorted with rage, but without his cybernetic enhancements, he was powerless to resist. "This is the price of imbalance," Lyra told him as he was led away. "Remember it well." As Forlag disappeared with his Kthar captors, Kalen felt the last of his strength failing. His connection to the network was consuming him despite Chip's buffers and Lyra's anchoring presence. "I need to disconnect now," he gasped. "Help me." "Release your hold on the key," Lyra instructed, her hands guiding his away from the crystal pillar. "Let go of the network, but hold on to yourself." Kalen struggled to follow her instructions, fighting against the vast consciousness that had begun to feel more natural than his limited human perspective. For a terrifying moment, he couldn't remember how to be just Kalen Vance again. Couldn't recall the boundaries of his own mind. "Kalen," Chip's voice cut through the confusion. "Remember that time you spent 3 days cataloging pottery shards and insisted on naming each one? That is not the behavior of a planetary consciousness. That is the behavior of a profoundly obsessive archaeologist. Remember who you are." The absurdity of the reminder jolted Kalen back to himself. With a final wrenching effort, he pulled his consciousness away from the network and back into his physical body. He collapsed, caught by Lyra's strong arms before he hit the floor. "Chip," he mumbled. "Is Chip okay?" "I am functional." The AI's voice came from the portable unit, which had separated from the crystal pillar. "Though I now possess approximately 18 exabytes of information about Lumini culture that I have no practical use for. Most of it seems to concern their equivalent of poetry readings, which were apparently just as tedious as human ones." Kalen laughed weakly, then looked up at Lyra. "The network? Is it stable?" She nodded, her luminescent patterns glowing with what he now recognized as happiness. "You have done what no one has managed in millennia. The balance is restored. The Devourer sleeps soundly once more. An Omnicorp, the Sanctuary's descent will take several days," Lyra explained. "By then, the surface entrance will be sealed and the energy signatures masked. They may continue their mining elsewhere on Xylos, but they will not find us again. Not unless the key calls another bearer." The room shuddered slightly as the ancient structure continued its descent into the safety of the planet's depths. Kalen realized that this was to be his new home. There was no going back to his old life, his old world. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Lyra said, helping him to a nearby control station that resembled a seat, "we rest. And then we begin to rebuild." Months passed in the sanctuary as Kalen recovered from his ordeal. The massive complex, once the heart of Lumini civilization, was now home to a strange new community. Kthar scouts regularly brought news from the surface, reporting that Forlag had indeed been exchanged for their captured kin, but had been recalled to Earth in disgrace. Omnicorp's operation on Xylos had been scaled back following the unexplained loss of a valuable asset and security. Team, the sanctuary itself had stabilized at a depth that kept it hidden but still connected to the planet's energy grid. Each day, Kalen and Lyra worked to restore more of its systems, reactivating dormant technologies, and learning how they might benefit not just the Lumini legacy and the Kthar, but all of Xylos. Chip had taken to the ancient systems with surprising adaptability, integrating himself more fully with the Sanctuary's memory cores and serving as a bridge between the alien technology and Kalen's more limited human understanding. The AI had developed what could only be described as a sense of purpose, alongside his customary sarcasm. "I have completed the translation of the agricultural archives," Chip announced one day as Kalen and Lyra worked at restoring a hydroponic system. The Lumini apparently engineered plants that could communicate their nutritional needs directly to their caretakers. Quite efficient, if somewhat disturbing to imagine vegetables begging for water. "Can we replicate them?" Kalen asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Despite the sanctuary's environmental controls, Physical labor still took its toll. Theoretically, Chip replied, the genetics are complex but preserved in the database. It would require a properly equipped biolab, which we have, and someone who understands advanced genetic engineering, which we don't. The Kthar have their own biological sciences, Lyra said thoughtfully. Different from ours, but perhaps complementary. I will speak with their elders about collaboration. Kalen smiled as he watched her move gracefully to another console. Over the months, he'd come to admire not just her knowledge and power, but her adaptability and compassion. Despite being the last of her kind, awakened into a world utterly changed from the one she'd known, she faced each day with determination and even occasional joy. And increasingly, that joy seemed to be directed at him. Their work together had created a bond that transcended their different origins. They had both lost their places in the worlds they'd known, but in doing so, they'd found a new purpose, and perhaps something more. You're staring again, Chip observed dryly from a nearby terminal. Your human mating rituals are remarkably inefficient. Among the Lumini, potential partners simply exchanged bioluminescent patterns to indicate interest. Chip, Kalen hissed, glancing quickly at Lyra to see if she'd heard. She gave no indication, focused on her work, though he thought he detected a slight brightening of the patterns on her skin. Later that evening, after their work was done, Kalen found Lyra in what they had come to call the observation chamber. A large room near the top of the sanctuary with a ceiling that could become transparent, revealing the layers of crystal and stone above them. It wasn't quite a view of the stars, but the crystalline structures refracted what little light penetrated from the surface, creating a beautiful array of colors and patterns. Chip told me I'd find you here, Kalen said, joining her on the bench-like structure that faced the display. Your artificial companion has developed quite an interest in my whereabouts, Lyra noted with amusement. I believe he is what humans would call matchmaking. Kalen felt his face grow warm. Chip has always lacked certain social subroutines. I can ask him to stop. There's no need, Lyra said, her voice gentle. She turned to face him fully, her luminescent patterns shifting to form new, intricate designs he hadn't seen before. I find his efforts endearing. Oh, Kalen managed, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting. That's good then. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the play of light above them. Finally, Kalen found the courage to ask the question that had been on his mind for weeks. Lyra, now that the sanctuary is mostly restored and the network is stable, what comes next? Will you try to find a way to bring back your people? To rebuild the Lumini civilization to its former glory? Lyra considered the question, her otherworldly eyes reflecting the shifting lights above. The technology exists in our archives to create more of my kind, it's true, but I've been thinking that perhaps the future of Xylos should not be a return to the past. The Kthar have built their own culture in our absence. They deserve a place here too. And what about you? Kalen asked quietly. What do you want? She turned to him, her expression thoughtful. When I was placed in stasis, I was a guardian, sworn to protect the balance at all costs. Power was a means to that end, never the goal itself. But after all this time, after seeing what the pursuit of power did to my civilization, to yours, Lyra reached out, her luminescent fingers gently touching Kalen's hand. There are things more valuable than power or legacy. Things I never appreciated until I awakened in this new world. Kalen's heart raced at her touch. Like what? Connection, she said simply. Understanding. The joy of discovery and creation shared with another mind. Her patterns brightened. With you, Kalen. He took her hand in his, marveling at how natural it felt despite their different biologies. I've been wondering if we're just thrown together by circumstance, he admitted. If what I feel is real, or just the result of all we've been through. Does it matter? Lyra asked. The Lumini believed that all connections were shaped by the greater patterns of existence. Some called it fate, others probability. In the end, the meaning comes from what we build together, not how we found each other. Kalen smiled. That's surprisingly pragmatic for a being of light and energy. We were not always so ethereal, Lyra laughed, the sound like crystal chimes. We had our moments of practicality. As they sat together beneath the refracted lights, a Cathar messenger arrived, chittering excitedly. "What's happened?" Kalen asked, recognizing enough of the Cathar language now to catch the urgency, but not the details. The messenger extended a crystalline data rod. "Surface news. The off-worlders retreat further. Their machines fail. Their leaders lose confidence in the mining." Chip's voice came over the sanctuary's communication system. "I'm receiving a data transmission from the Cathar scouts who monitor Omnicorp's activities. It appears that since our stabilization of the energy grid, their drilling equipment has been experiencing unexplained malfunctions whenever they approach sensitive nodes. The corporation is losing money and patience. The balance protects itself now," Lyra said with satisfaction. "The network you restored is more adaptive than before, capable of subtle defenses against those who would disrupt it." "So Omnicorp is leaving?" Kalen asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Not entirely," Chip clarified, "but they're scaling back significantly. It seems they've received more promising survey results from another system, and the continued difficulties here make Xylos increasingly unprofitable." The Cathar messenger chittered again, its compound eyes gleaming with what might have been humor. "They blame angry spirits. Say planet is cursed." Kalen couldn't help but laugh. "Well, they're not entirely wrong." After the messenger departed, Kalen and Lyra remained in the observation chamber, discussing what this new development meant for Xylos and their sanctuary. As the conversation drifted to plans for the future, Kalen found himself growing pensive. "What's troubling you?" Lyra asked, sensitive as always to his moods. "I was just thinking about Earth," he admitted. "I don't miss Omnicorp or that life, but there's a whole universe out there. Part of me wonders if we're hiding away here when we could be doing more." Lyra considered this. "The sanctuary is not a prison, Kalen. The key chose you for a reason, and perhaps that reason extends beyond just restoring the balance here on Xylos. The Lumini once traveled among the stars before we found our home here. Such journeys might be possible again, in time. You consider leaving? Once everything here is stable." "With you." Her patterns rippled in what he now recognized as affection. "I would consider many things I never thought possible before." Chip's voice interrupted, managing to sound both apologetic and amused. "I hate to disturb this touching moment of interspecies bonding, but you might want to move to the Central Nexus. The Cathar elders have arrived for the scheduled cultural exchange, and they've brought what appears to be their equivalent of ceremonial feast provisions. Unless you enjoy the taste of fermented cave beetles, I suggest we activate the Lumini hydroponics display sooner rather than later." They stood together, hands still joined. As they walked toward the Central Nexus, Kalen reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here, from disillusioned corporate archaeologist to the guardian of an ancient alien legacy, from solitary human to partner of the last Lumini. None of it was what he had expected when he first uncovered the crystal key, but somehow it felt right. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked as they approached the chamber where the Cathar waited. "That life is full of unexpected turns," he replied, "and that I'm grateful for the one that led me here. To this place. To you." Lyra paused just before they entered, turning to face him fully. The Lumini had a saying, "The brightest patterns emerge from chaos." I believe they would be pleased with how their legacy has evolved. Kalen smiled. "And what about you? Are you pleased with how things have turned out?" The alien woman smiled, a gesture she had adopted from him, but which transformed her luminescent features into something breathtakingly beautiful. "I don't want power. I don't want lost glories or ancient empires. Restored," she said softly. "I just want you, human." And as they entered the chamber together to greet their Cathar allies, Kalen knew that whatever future awaited them, on Xylos or among the stars, they would face it together, guardians of a balance far greater and more precious than either of them had ever imagined.